Hi guys, this is Lynn. I'm a concept artist who work in both animation and game industry. For my work, I do a lot of character designs, background paintings, a little bit art directing as well. For my personal work, I do mostly corgi illustrations. I love to play with color and light, it's always fun. Today, I'm really happy to get the chance to share with you guys my work process and show you guys this amazing new product that Wacom had sent it to me. Ta-da! It's a big box. That's the new Wacom Cintiq 22. I've actually been using it for a couple weeks now. I really love it. Thank you so much, Wacom, for sending this to me. It's absolutely amazing. I love to share it with you guys. Here it is. That's the new Cintiq 22. It's super nice and clean. I love the new design. I had it set up with my iMac. So I usually will have my reference in maybe music playing from my iMac, and the Cintiq is just for Photoshop, which is pretty neat. This is a pencil kind of brush. It has really nice sensitivity, and it just feels like drawing on paper. I have friends asking me like, does it feel like just drawing on a glass? It's just a screen. No, it's not like that. You can probably tell from the reflection. It's actually a super matte finish. It doesn't feel slippery at all. I feel like I took it for granted, but I can't really imagine without it. It just feels super natural drawing on top. I'd like to show you guys a video I recorded of one of my illustrations. It actually took longer than I expected, but it was fun, so let's see it. I usually start with line sketches. As you guys could see, it's really rough pencil drawings. Basically, it's just helped me figure out the composition, gesture of the characters, or basic stuff. It's more like notes to myself. It's not really detailed drawings. Because it's rough, I would do it over and over again. I would start a really loose sketch and tune down the opacity and start a new layer and draw on top. And I'll probably do it like 10-30 times. It depends. But because it's simple, it doesn't take much of my time, so I could change however I want. I think at that stage, it's important to think about what kind of emotion you want to have with characters. What are the things they could be doing? It's always good to have some sort of story you want to tell instead of just having a character standing still and doing nothing. That's what I found super helpful for my image. Let's say I have this character and I want him having a sip of morning coffee. So at this point, you can imagine what kind of mood are you in when you have a cup of coffee with your friends in the morning. Let's say this character has some hamster little friends. If the little dog wanna smell the coffee, what his friends will be doing at the same time, maybe helping him around, maybe messing around. And this is my finished sketch. I kept it quite loose, so I'm not too precious about it. After the sketch, I start blocking in some bigger shapes using local values. I use a texture brush that I usually use. So this brush, I forgot where I got it, but it has a soft kind of touch to it. I also use clipping layers to paint in the shapes of the inner fur, like the white part. It's quite easy to do it when you're using clipping layers. So at this stage, I'm just blocking in the bigger shapes and figuring out more defined shapes of the details. Most of it's local color, but I also kind of separate the lighter values and slightly darker values. I wouldn't do it too much, it's mostly just about the shape. For loud shapes like the hair, like the fur, I would use softer brushes. But I also use lasso tool quite a bit, and also shape tools, which would give me a cleaner and sharper edge if I needed to. Another way I use quite often, that is to just use a simple geometric shape and use free transform or warp to force it into the perspective, if that makes sense. When I'm blocking in on the major shapes, I'm also thinking about how to arrange the details. Because when we're adding more details, it's important to keep in mind not to be distracting. So when you're adding new props, let's say the plants, and it's really important to think about how to serve the main characters. I really like to have some pineapple details in there because I chose the yellow color, like mustard yellow for the major color palette, and I think pineapple is just a kind of random but also fun elements to throw in there, so I was spending some time doing pineapple shapes. I was making a design and just warp it into perspective, and it's not quite there. I'll probably go back into it. As you can see, I use a lot of reference, especially for props that I'm not super confident with. I would definitely go online, just look for some reference. Yeah, it definitely helps a lot. When looking for reference, I find it really helpful having a rough idea of what kind of lighting situation you want to be doing. For example, in this image, I wanted to have a morning outdoor cafe kind of lighting, so everything should be well lit, have a sunny feeling. When I look for reference, I will find images that's more in line with the lighting situation I have in mind, so that will be more helpful. I was trying to add some milk froth on top, the foam. I don't think it was quite working, so I ended up deleting it, I think. Yeah, at this stage I'm trying to add more details into this image. Still blocking in the shapes. Every object is on a separate layer actually. I do work with layers quite a bit. I think it's, well, in the end it gets kind of messy. I would merge it down, but right now I like to have everything on a separate layer so it's easy to change around. For example, the dog, I will have like the main silhouette on the base layer, and all the smaller shapes like eyes, nose, white hair on the separate layer, all clipped under the main shape layer. Same with the table and hamsters, it's all smaller shapes within a bigger shape, and each shape is on a separate layer. In that way, it's easy to control each part of the hair, or each part of the objects. It's easy to change it around. Here I painted in some field light on the tablecloth and on top of the dog's head. That is the blue light coming from the sky, and I add some key light on the tablecloth as well. That's the sunlight. I really wanted to have a strong contrast between sunlight and the shadow area, play with more of the color temperature change. Yeah, because it's outdoor, the side that's facing upwards in the shadow will definitely get more affected by the field light that coming from the sky. That's why it's so much blue. I like to exaggerate it quite a bit, and yeah, I think as long as you understand how the lights work, it's really fun to just pushing things around and see how far you can go. Here I'm adding some shadows under the sugar that the little hamster is holding. And yeah, I decided to change the color of the coffee mug, so another new set of reference images added in there. I do have the reference image just laying right beside where I was painting. It's easy for me to see. Sometimes I have it on the separate screen, but I find it's more useful just having it right next to the object I'm painting. I do not color pick from the image directly because the photo color is not necessarily the same as the color I wanted in my painting, but I think it's important information from the photos I could get, that is like how the light bounces off on the bottom of the mug, and how warm that light is, where the reflection is. I think that's really helpful. I'm still trying to add a little foam there. Nope, doesn't work. So I think it's just a little bit of reflection. It's simple enough to indicate the water texture. Here I'm just polishing things up a little bit, define the facial structure of the corgi, adding some details. It's important to keep in mind that when we're adding details to the image, do not go too much. I tend to do that quite often. I want to have a lot of things going on in the same scene, but it ended up too messy and distracting. I have to pull it back a little bit. Right now I'm adding a little bit more key light on the hamsters. It's just a level adjustment clipped to the main shape on top of all the smaller shapes. So when you do a higher key light, it's easy to paint over everything and still have control. You could hide the layers and hide the light, so it's quite manageable. Here I'm trying to add the ground to reduce the contrast between the props and table legs versus the background. Here I was doing a texture for the cobblestone, adding some color variations and fit into the perspective. I find it's much easier doing it that way instead of painting it into perspective. I was struggling a little bit with the ground because I like to have something there to indicate that it's within an environment that has a floor, that makes sense. But also the way the ground feels like so heavy, it wasn't what I really wanted. So I was changing it around, making it lighter, making it brighter. Yeah. Yep, I ended up changing the whole thing. I spent several days on this because I only have my nights working on this image. If I feel I'm stuck at some point, I will just stop and go to bed. And when I come back the next day or the next night, I will have a fresh idea where I want it to be, where the things are, how I can try a different approach to it. So yeah, because it's personal work, I think it's important to take your time and rethink what you want and take a step back and see where you can change, where you can improve. Right now, I'm just improving the lighting a little bit, where because I know the sunlight is coming from the on the right side of the image right now, because I flip my image quite a bit. It's important to know where your light source is coming from. I actually spend a lot of time when I first start the loose sketch and spend a long time on the finished stage. In the middle stage, it's a lot of just blocking in the shapes. A lot of times the colors and values during this awkward middle stage is not pretty. But it really makes a difference when you take your time and think about where you want to go, what you want to achieve to get through this middle stage. Really think about how the lighting could work, how you can push it. Just consider one light source at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. For example, where is my key light coming from? Where's my light source? And paint those light in. The strong sunlight will bounce off the table and hit, let's say, the underside of the dog's nose, if it's warmer, if it's cooler. So really just trace down each light source and see and painting the light effects. I think personally that works for me very well. I tried to add some atmosphere there to really tone down the contrast between the flower pot and the floor, but it wasn't quite working, so I ended up changing the whole color of it. I wanted to add a pineapple in there just to go with the chair, but I think that's too much, and then just switch it back to a simple pot. So yeah, there's a lot of changing back and forth, but it's personal work and can take your time. In the end, I decided to change the pineapple detailed design on the chair because the previous design is just so sharp and thin and fragile. I wanted to have like a more solid and bolder design, so I ended up changing it in the end. But I could spend more time on this image, but I think for telling a story, it's good enough. So this is the final image. Yeah. You can see where I get my inspirations from. This is Mochi. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you Wacom for sending me the Cintiq and inviting me to do this video. It's been really fun. Yeah, hope to see you guys next time.